Thank you for joining us this week, and welcome to
Bottle Bond.
All right, so we had a couple hours worth of conversation at this point.
Yeah.
We've been talking about bourbon.
Yes, sir.
So I know everything about the beginning of bourbon, right?
I think so, except for no, not at all. Not even no.
So it's consistent with our historical record of bourbon, which is nobody has any idea where it came from except out of magic.
Yes. Yes. Or more specifically, nobody has any idea about like a lot of the really important things. There's a lot of really recorded details, but they're all sort of like, okay, like, cool, that distillery was founded in that year. That's great. Awesome. But who invented bourbon? No one knows.
So, like, you're telling me nobody kept good notes.
That's ironically what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about sour mash, and specifically with sour mash and how that got started in bourbon and in the bourbon industry. We're going to talk about James C. Crow, who is the guy attributed with like really refining the sour mash process here in the States.
Okay. All right. I think I've heard of sour mash. I don't think I actually have had sour mash.
Yeah, so sour mash is actually a part of the distillation process.
Okay.
But we'll get into all that here in a minute.
Okay.
So
you said James Crow.
yes, James Crow.
Like James Crow.
James, not Jim.
Okay.
James.
Okay.
And
Just making sure.
Specifically Dr. James C. Crow.
Okay. You said he is Scottish, right?
Yeah, he was a Scottish immigrant.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, he came over in like the 1830s and started messing around. He's attributed with the guy who refined sour mash, like I was saying. But some of the things about him that are really, really cool are like he was one of the first people who really used the scientific method in whiskey.
Okay.
And like he kept just copious amounts of notes. Call back. And so we have like a lot of information. But like he really brought science into it, which at the time was not a part of whiskey making. A lot of it was just, kind of by gut and art and, whatever you could do.
But in my experience, like drinking heavily and science go really well together. So.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Specifically biology and chemistry.
Yeah, well, fair enough. So you're saying we're going to talk about good old James Crow, right?
That's right.
Which means we're also going to talk about Old Crow.
That's right, because that's his bourbon. Well, this one isn't. It got bought out. But we're going to drink it in his honor today. All right. So James Crow, he, like I said, he's responsible for or credited with refining the sour mash. Now, what sour mash is when you distill your whiskey and you get rid of the remnant, right? Like the stuff where the yeast has like been heated up and, or where you've heated it up and it's evaporated and you've got your distillate and all that, you take some of that and you leave it in there. You get rid of most of it, but you keep a little bit. And what that does is it adds some consistency to your whiskey so that your whiskeys taste the same. And so, especially early on in whiskey, that was one of the things that was really attributed to Crow was that his whiskey was, it had some consistency to it.
So you're telling me that he was the original like sourdough hipster, basically.
I mean,
right? Sounds like it's a little bit like keeping
it's really similar to
sourdough. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you're not wrong.
So he's the OG hipster, is what I'm hearing.
I very much doubt he was a hipster, but he's definitely an OG.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
OG is old granddad. That's some other time.
Yeah, we'll do that later. I love old granddad. This is Old Crow. So, so you get some consistency with using sour mash. It also stabilizes your fermentation a bit, so that it's a little bit less chaotic, and then. It also prevented bacterial contamination, which anybody who's done any distilling or brewing of any kind knows that like the number one most important thing is keep all of your equipment super, super clean because even just a little bit of something can completely ruin a batch. So the sour mash helped prevent that.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
So just a point of note, I was able to find a glass bottle of this.
Oh, very cool.
Harder than I expected.
Yeah, Old Crow nowadays, it's just not what it used to be. It was considered like really good whiskey.
Yeah.
Like it was top whiskey. It was top shelf. People loved it. So originally when he made it, it was just sold as Crow. That's it. It said Crow on the barrel. And that's what he sold it as. It became Old Crow because people would let it sit in the barrel for a little bit longer, and then it would taste better. And so Old Crow became what they were ordering. Can I get Crow? Can I get Old Crow?
Okay.
And then so they leaned into that, and that became the name of the whiskey.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. James Crow, Old Crow.
Yeah.
Since 1835.
Yes, sir. Well, that's when he came over and started messing around, of course.
Yeah.
Because
that is pre...
Prohibition.
So it's like long before any of the rules and anything, right? So this was...
Oh, yeah.
So this was sort of the real forefather because he tried to make something consistent.
Yep.
Without anybody telling him it was the right thing to do.
Yep, he was one of it's one of the reasons we're doing the episode is because if we're going to talk about the beginning of bourbon, you got to talk about James Crow.
All right.
He and this like we talked about, this is long before Prohibition. This is long before the Bottled and Bond Act. So I mean, like this was drank by Ulysses S. Grant, both as a general during the Civil War, like he drank a lot of it, and then later on when he was president, still drinking a bunch of it. Mark Twain is cited as this being his favorite whiskey.
Okay.
It was really, it was a really, really popular whiskey for a really long time. In fact, I mean, like James Crow died in 1856, and for decades after that, it was still considered a top whiskey. In fact, they hired his assistant, William F. Mitchell. They hired his assistant to come in and make sure that Old Crow was still good, and it was tasty, and it was all the things that they wanted out of it.
Nice. So he basically just continued the process forward at that point.
Yeah. Well, it got bought out by William A. Gaines.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then from William A. Gaines, they got William F. Mitchell W.A. Gaines got William F. Mitchell to be the new head distiller because he was James Crow's assistant.
Okay.
But yeah, for a really long time. In fact, it really didn't. It didn't like go down in the public opinion until like the mid 20th century.
Okay.
There was a production error that happened as they were making some Old Crow, and it was bad enough that when it came out, it completely wrecked their sales. It wrecked their reputation. And not long after that, Jim Beam and now Beam Suntory bought it, and it's not even the same mash bill or anything anymore. It's just the Jim Beam mash bill.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really one of the sadder stories in whiskey.
So they don't even. So this isn't even actually Old Crow.
No.
Okay. That sucks.
It's just modern Old Crow.
That sucks.
But to be fair, like finding a bottle of actual Old Crow, you're talking tens of thousands. Like, because it's like it would have had to have been pre-1930s that it was made. We're talking about like getting a bottle like that's going to be crazy. But we can drink this in the honor of James C. Crow and the sadness that happened to his legacy.
Dr. James Crow, Old Crow. So it's 40% alcohol by volume, making it 80 proof. Oh, my bottle is signed. Ooh, I mean,
I wonder if that's like his actual signature. Like, I mean, clearly he didn't write that on your bottle, but maybe like they have a copy of his signature.
Yeah,
from
I
his
assume
notes.
they lifted it from some of his old stuff.
I really hope they did. If they just had some calligrapher come in, that makes me sad. That would make me sad.
It's worth some homework time, right?
Yeah, it's for sure.
Division of the Old Crow Distillery Company, Frankfurt, Claremont, which I assume is Claremont because it's spelled Claremont. Let's see.
Even the old distilleries shut down. Like they moved it to one of the Jim Beam distilleries. Everything.
Yeah, I drove by there once. Actually, it's a nice place for it to have moved. At least it's just like white barns on rolling hills. It's kind of cool. Yeah. I mean, it looks very similar to the advertising, basically.
That makes sense.
When Dr. James Crow invented the sour mash process in 1835, he revolutionized Kentucky bourbon making. Okay, cool. Hyphenated words are fun.
And I mean, that's not an overstatement. Like sour mash is still used today. Like it's a really common part of the distilling process in today's bourbon making. And that's the thing I love about it is 1835 and we still use his processes. Yep. And a lot of that's because he was meticulous about it.
Yeah. So he's kind of the antithesis of like the single barrel notion.
Yeah,
right.
Elijah Craig and like oak barrels.
Yeah.
So I mean, Elijah Craig is attributed with like aging in oak barrels, but I mean, there's also just like you tossing it in barrels and like happened on it.
No, but what I mean is like the sort of the idea of a single barrel is that it's the only one that'll taste like how it tastes. Whereas with this, it's kind of homogenizing everything. So there's some amount of tasting. Common taste with the whole line, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, and one of the great things that's a really great call out because, so single barrel is going to be unique to the barrel. And so this was designed so that even with single barrels, there's consistency along the line.
Right.
And that way, you still have an idea of what you're getting, even if it's a little bit more unique.
Right.
And that's, that's
so if you're like hunting the single barrel thing, it's worth noting if the place you're hunting it from has uses sour mash or not, because it'll be way bigger differences, right?
Oh yeah, big swings. And so you could have hugely different swings and such like that. This definitely helps with that. That's nice. A really cool call.
Nice. Okay.
You want to taste it?
Yeah, you want to open it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's a
nice clean pop.
Gotta love it. All right. For you, half ounce.
All right.
For me, half ounce.
You look like you pulled an Adam there.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So, I don't know how this is going to be, but to you.
To you, and to the bond.
To the bond.
Very little flavor, or very little smell.
Yeah, the smell is it's subtle. I get charcoal. Like burned up charcoal, like the gray stuff.
I might need a little bit more to be able to smell it very well.
Oh yeah, no, sure. I mean, no judgment.
I mean, without tasting it, this is probably not the best plan I've ever had, but
But yeah, in a grill, after the charcoal's burned away, you're done cooking the meat and all that sort of stuff, and you open it up and you got to clean out the grill, like the gray ash from charcoal. That's kind of what it smells like to me.
Okay. Bark, right?
Maybe a little bit of molasses. Yep. Well, that's Old Crow.
I mean, honestly, it's I can see why. It's drinkable. It's not awful or anything.
Yeah. I mean, this is really inexpensive whiskey.
Yeah.
Right. This is the kind of stuff you go in and you buy a handle for $7.
Yeah.
And.
Well, a handle?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, a $7.50.
Okay, yeah. I was like, a handle's I think that's 12. It's big spenders. Big spenders.
It's true. But Old Crow, and there's a vodka like that,
Pop Off not Pop Off, Smirnoff. I think it's Smirnoff. Or?
No, there's one even lower than Schlags or something like that. But it's what I will say the people that I know who don't drink for taste and have maybe potentially a problem with drinking.
Yeah.
If they're going to consistently go through a bottle every day, this is the sort of thing that you'll see them get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going through a bottle a day, that's even at $10 a bottle, that adds up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's so unfortunate because Old Crow really was an American treasure. It was a gem in the crown of bourbon, and it's the stuff that James Crow did still affects everybody to this day.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is what we have that's left with it. I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll toss it in a drink. I'll mix it up, all that sort of stuff. But
I can see this making an old fashioned, because it's got some bitter, tart weirdness to it. But you'd round that off with the
sugar.
Yeah, the sugar, but even the orange and the cherry would help.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to prefer a high rye, and I don't even know what this is actually. I don't know anything about its mash bill. It don't feel like it's a high rye though, because it doesn't burn enough.
Yep. No peppery burn.
No, I mean, it's good. This is an approachable whiskey. It is cheap to buy. What you're not going to get out of this is anything super crafty, super cool. It's going to just be a decent whiskey that you can pour.
Yep.
And that's what that is.
And it would be consistent.
Yeah.
Do you know if they still make it with sour mash process?
I'm sure that they still use sour mash.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I would actually be interested in distillers who aren't using sour mash, because it's so common now. It's a part of making whiskey at this point.
Technically, they say, in fact, Old Crow, trademark bourbon, was the first bourbon to begin using this process. Today, the sour mash process has become a standard in the bourbon industry.
That's true. And you notice how they say it was the first bourbon? Because much like everything else we've talked about, it was being done overseas with whiskey in Scotland and Ireland already.
Aged for a full 3 years in new charred white oak barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even got 2 websites, one of which is drinksmart.com.
Oh, that's going to be the don't drink and drive.
Oh, no, clearly it has a lot to do with, like, picking high-quality whiskey.
I mean, it's a thing that everyone should try.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's definitely not something to avoid. I mean, it's not... It may not be the best expression that's ever made, but it's still a valid whiskey.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
I mean, I'd say, like, if I were going to try it, I would stop by a liquor store that's got good pricing.
Yeah.
And buy the bottle, and then,
yeah,
you know, if
maybe
I toss half of it, I don't mind.
Yeah, you might not even need a full bottle. You can probably just get one of the little flask bottles.
Yeah, but, like, I would not go to a bar and pay bartender prices for it because this is not worth $8 or $10 a pour.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing I want to encourage our listeners is that you'll find a lot of people, especially in whiskey, that they get real snooty about it. They're like, I'm not drinking your Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
You know, okay, fine. You can be that guy. And I got no problems with that guy. I got problems with that guy. But that's fine.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be scared of the whiskey.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not going to offend you. It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be the most delicious thing you've ever tasted.
Right. It tastes, and it definitely, more likely, you know, I could definitely see, like, getting a hangover from this.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have the clean, like...
It doesn't feel as clean, does it?
No.
Especially, like, when we've been drinking, like, we were drinking something finished in a port cask earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like, and with that, you get just some really, really nice notes and some things and this just doesn't have that. And it's fine. Again, there's no problems with Old Crow. Drink Old Crow once or twice.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think if you have any interest in bourbon, it seems to be good enough that it's worth your time. I would say, especially, you know, as a forefather of the industry, like, and a forefather of the process in general, like, you know, give it a go.
Yeah, might as well. Add it to your palate reservoir, your palate library, whatever you want to call it. And if you're going to throw a tasting where you're bringing a bunch of stuff from early America, Old Crow should definitely be there. Even though, like we talked about, it not being actual Old Crow.
No. You said, so this has changed hands a bunch of times, right? You said, so he started doing this in 1835, then it got purchased by So W.A. Gaines and Company purchased it after his death. Okay.
And then William F. Mitchell, his assistant, was the head distiller for a while. And then I think it was in the 30s that Jim Beam bought it.
Okay.
And then and then of course Beam became Beam Suntory, and it may have exchanged hands a few times between then as well, because I feel like...
Well, your notes say 1987.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Why did I say the 30s? Yeah. So, and then Beam bought it in 1987.
Yeah. So more than likely, actually, in that era, there was probably some handoff. Like, I assume this was one of the ones that did they close during Prohibition?
So they did okay in Prohibition, actually. Okay. They weren't licensed, but they survived. So on the other side, they kept going. Okay. And so that was a big thing with Prohibition as well, is that, like, at the end of Prohibition, a lot of distilleries didn't reopen. They had died. Right. Kind of like what happened in COVID. Right. And we'll talk about that during Prohibition, the Prohibition episodes, when we get into the 6 distilleries that were granted medical licenses and such. Right. But they made it to the other side, and they were able to get back into the game.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's, I mean, I think, to be totally frank, I think my the notion that it's not the original recipe definitely takes some wind out of the sails for me. Yeah. Like, I was very excited about, like, you know, being able to, you know, like, follow the trail of flavor, right, as it were. And it sucks that you can't. But you know.
And unfortunately, it's going to be a thing that we'll have to get used to a little bit, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do E.H. Taylor. And even that is owned by new people. It's just a dedication bottle to E.H. Taylor.
Yeah.
It's not his original stuff.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, his distillery was bought by George T. Stagg, which later became Sazerac. So,
okay.
Or later became Buffalo Trace and all that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's a thing. And it's it's a sad thing, but.
Yeah.
It's tasting old whiskeys is a real niche part of whiskey collecting and being into the whiskey hobby, and it can quickly become a very expensive part and a very difficult part.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And yeah, it's a thing that anytime I have the opportunity, I really cherish.
Yeah, I definitely looked into the tax advantage nature of some of doing this as a business because of exactly that, right?
Yeah. It's amazing how much you can spend,
Yeah.
But not on Old Crow.
Yeah.
Or at least not on this version of Old Crow.
Yeah, exactly. If you find an original Old Crow,
yeah, you're gonna spend.
I guess you call it very Old Crow at that point.
Yeah.
Right. So, but no, I mean, I guess in some ways it's also a lesson, right, for the way that the industry works, right? Because you think about, call back to a second ago, right? Like small batch or single barrel year over year, different every time you have it.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
can be.
E.H. Taylor has a small batch or a single barrels or whatever, right? And all those things, right? They're just not exactly the same every time. It's close.
Yeah.
Right. But like the things that are not sour mashed especially are going to be very different.
A really good example of that is, so a few years back, Balcones, a Texas distiller, introduced Lineage. And I bought a bottle the year it came out, and I loved that bottle. I killed that bottle so fast.
Yep.
It was delicious. It had like faint traces of plum in there, and it was so good. And so I distracted myself with other whiskeys for a little bit because and
meaning you ran out.
Yeah, I ran out.
Yeah. okay. I was like, what? Just
by the time I got back to buy another bottle,
Yeah.
I tasted it. I was like, it's a new year. It's no, it not, and it was vastly different. It's much darker earth notes, much more of that sort of stuff. No more plum, and it made me so sad because that first year of that was so good. Now, I mean, a standard person's not going to notice as much,
right.
But if you're buying that bottle of whiskey, you probably are buying it for a reason.
Yeah.
And so,
well, yeah. I mean, case in point, right? Before thinking about that, right? The Lineage, where it's like a different thing. I just started down the trail of the Burning Chair stuff, right? And Burning Chair, we discovered recently that in fact it wasn't even 3 bottles. There's at least 4 different bottlings of it, and they're all very different. Every single one of them is like incredibly different.
Yeah, it was so. So we filmed the Burning Chair bottle crack with the 3 bottles, and then you texted me, "I found another."
Yeah,
and like 2 days later, you're like, "I found yet another."
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Oh my god."
Yeah,
and this isn't like even a thing that came out year after year after year. This is just
as far as I still need to reach out to the distiller and the producer and figure out like the real story there, because it sounds like the article I originally read when I got kind of like, curious about it, maybe was talking about like the premiere release, which is like the one that like our friend gave us, where like the bottle was half handwritten and everything.
Yeah.
Because that one, the article said it was only like 1,500 bottles or something. It was super small.
And it was so good.
Which would be that's like 7 barrels.
Yeah.
8 barrels maybe.
Depending on how long they aged it, yeah.
Yeah, and so like, I guess that one was 80 proof, so yeah, like 8-ish, 7 or 8 barrels or whatever, right? Sure. But like that. That was like so different between the one she had like given us and then the one I'd found in the store, and then the other one I found in the store, right? There's like the black bottle version of it, and then I just like they're all those square ones. Then I found a round bottle version of it. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like these totally different, right? They have the 3 versions of that square bottle.
Yeah.
I haven't even opened that 4th one. And then, like, I keep finding it all over the place. I found it in Georgia the other day just on a shelf. And I'm like, as far as I know, this is this bottle's old.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
that's the thing that happens, though.
Yeah.
As all bourbon hunters will know, like sometimes you find like a mom and pop liquor store that just happens to have a bottle that They don't know what it is, but
they paid for it already. You might as well leave it on the shelf, and somebody might buy it, right?
Yep, exactly.
But then then there's actually this barrel's a great example, right? Mm-hmm. This barrel has a story I want to tell at some point because Still Austin mm-hmm. does a seasonal thing where they have the blue corn and the red corn, and they have 4 seasons worth of releases. And so I didn't realize that at the time either, right? I saw this thing, I'm like, that's super cool. And I didn't even really think about the fact that all of this stuff is based on seasonal crops. Mm-hmm. Right. And so clearly there's going to be something you could do that's fun and experimental in that fashion.
Oh yeah. And especially and that's one of the things I like about Still Austin is they're always experimenting.
Yep.
Every bottle that comes out, they're messing around with something new, and it's some really amazing stuff that they do over there.
And so I know a lot of other industries though, a lot of the other spirits do have stuff like that because of the nature of their things. So agave takes a long time to grow and mature and stuff, right? And so mm-hmm. I found I don't love tequila, but I found a tequila maker that has this notion of heirloom releases. And so the bottle has a name on it.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the field it came from. And so you can only get agave from that field every 12 years or whatever it is, because they rotate everything to keep all of the fields healthy.
Which of course they need to be doing.
Yeah. But then it's great because they rotate everything. So this year's batch is from this field, and then that year's batch is from that field. And
that is really cool.
Yeah, and there's so that was really cool. And then there's another one that's this place in Hawaii, Seven Seas Distilling or something like that. And I originally found them because they make awesome vodka. They're called Ocean. But then we were there visiting family and visiting friends, and we wound up going to the distillery, and they had a rum that was aged in bourbon barrels.
Nice.
Which I was super stoked on until I saw the price, and I was like, "Wow!" And then my wife was like, "We're on vacation, it's fine." I'm like, "All right, cool, let's buy 3." So they were made in these cool handmade ceramic bottles, which of course are not consistently liquid tight. So one of them definitely leaked, which was not great. But the rum was made with heirloom sugar cane. So every time they harvested it, it was grossly different.
Yeah.
And in Hawaii, stuff grows like wildfire. So they could literally just be we found this from, a different island. And in 8 hours or whatever, it's huge, fully matured. It's wild. My parents used to throw seed pits off their porch, and they'd wind up with fruit trees next season.
Whoa.
Not 4 seasons, next season.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was wild.
It's got to be all the volcanic soil.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's got to be partly the volcanic soil. I think it's also got to be partly the just the rainfall is consistent, but it's got really good drainage as well.
Okay.
So,
I gotta say, sir, this was delicious.
It was. Honestly, I did not. I expected more, but I also didn't expect anything.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, when I picked it up, the most of the bottles were plastic or small. Mm-hmm. Or, how come they only come in fits in your pocket or fits in the back of your car, but no in betweens, right? They don't.
Because like we were talking about, there's a certain person who buys Old Crow. Yeah.
The target audience is not me, but honestly, it is because I do like the legacy.
Yeah, and it holds its own.
Yeah.
It's not going to hold its own against some amazing stuff, but it holds its own as what it is.
It has a purpose.
It does.
It has a purpose other than blackout. Okay. Right.
Correct.
Right. It has a you know what? Who knows? Maybe it'll make a great mixed drink at some point.
Agreed.
I haven't tried it yet. I'm gonna have to try it later.
I'm gonna pass on another pour though. So to you.
Same. Yeah. To you too. To the bond. Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, that's good enough. I'm gonna call it.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. Cool.